the moment still lingers for many of us. The echo of shoes on a polished hall floor, the scrape of wooden chairs being nudged into lines, the faint cough quickly swallowed by silence. In seconds, the room changed. What had been chatter became a heavy hush, and every child seemed suddenly aware of themselves. Back then, a school assembly wasn't just another part of the day. It carried a weight you could feel in your stomach. You remember sitting straighter, breathing quieter, wondering what was coming next, and why something so ordinary felt so serious. That question takes us back. By the 1960s, Britain was still carrying the shape of the post-war years. Daily life prized order, routine, and knowing your place, and childhood was no exception. Families were rebuilding, communities were close-knit, and authority was rarely questioned out loud. Schools mirrored that world perfectly. They were places of structure, clear rules, and expectations that children adapted rather than challenged. Assemblies sat at the heart of this system. Every morning, pupils were gathered together, not just to start the day, but to be reminded of how to behave, how to listen, and how to belong. The hall became a symbol of togetherness and control rolled into one. Back then, this felt normal. Few adults paused to wonder how such moments felt from a child's point of view. Today we talk openly about feelings and emotional well-being. In the 1960s, that language barely existed. Children were expected to absorb lessons quietly, carry themselves properly, and move on. It was within that atmosphere that assemblies took on their powerful emotional charge, setting the stage for memories that still linger, waiting to be understood decades later by those who lived them and remembered them vividly still, even now, without explanation or warning entirely. Assemblies felt intimidating, not because of what happened, but because of how they felt. Everything about them was formal. The way you lined up in silence, the instruction to stand or sit together, the expectation that every movement was perfectly timed. Even the air seemed to change once you were inside that hall. Silence played a powerful role. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of children, all quiet at once. No whispering, no fidgeting, no looking around for reassurance. If someone dropped a book or shuffled their feet, it felt painfully loud. You became acutely aware of your own body, your breathing, your place in the room. Today, such stillness would feel unusual. Back then, it was demanded. The language used in assemblies added another layer. Words were often formal, carefully chosen, and not always easy for young ears to grasp. You listened closely, worried about missing something important, unsure what reaction was expected. There was rarely an invitation to ask questions or explain confusion. You simply absorbed what you could and hoped it was enough. Then there was the feeling of being watched. Teachers stood at the edges, scanning rows, noticing everything. Standing out felt risky. A wrong movement, a wandering glance, even a poorly timed cough could draw attention. Most children learned quickly that the safest option was to blend in completely. Looking back, it's clear that assemblies weren't designed to frighten. They were meant to guide and unify. But for many children, the atmosphere alone was enough to stir nerves and unease. That emotional undercurrent quietly shaped behavior, teaching lessons far beyond the spoken words. And those lessons didn't end when the assembly finally did either. Those quiet minutes settled deep inside, resurfacing years later as memories of tension, obedience, and a hall that always seemed larger than life itself. Long before anyone explained it, assemblies taught children how to exist quietly in the world. You learned how to sit still even when your legs wanted to move, how to keep your eyes forward, how to listen without interrupting. These were not lessons written on the wall, yet they were absorbed daily, sinking in through repetition. Authority was another silent teacher. Adults spoke, children listened, and that order rarely shifted. Over time, many pupils accepted that this was simply how things worked. Questioning felt inappropriate, even risky. Confidence, for some, grew from mastering these expectations. For others, it faded slightly, replaced by caution and self-monitoring. Perhaps the most lasting lesson was about belonging. To blend in was to be safe. To stand out was to feel exposed. Assemblies rewarded sameness, encouraging children to move as one, respond as one, and think carefully before acting alone. At the time, none of this was discussed. There were no conversations about feelings or pressure. Life moved on to lessons and playtime, yet these quiet teachings stayed behind, shaping how many adults later approached workplaces, meetings, and authority itself. often without realizing where those instincts had first taken root during childhood assemblies long ago. The feeling never really disappeared. For many, it simply changed shape over time. Some remember a quiet pride in getting it right, in standing still, listening well, doing what was expected. There was comfort in order, in knowing the rules, in feeling part of something bigger than yourself. Yet, alongside that, pride often sat a flutter of nerves, a tightness that never quite went away. Years later, those sensations can return in unexpected moments. A silent room, a formal gathering, the sense of eyes upon you. Suddenly, you are back on a hard chair, hands folded, waiting. Assemblies were meant to prepare children for life, and in many ways they did. But they also left emotional fingerprints, subtle and personal. For some, they built resilience. For others, caution. Most carried a mix of both, shaped quietly, never named, but remembered all the same, long after childhood had quietly faded away. Today, school assemblies feel very different. There is more movement, more conversation, and a gentler tone that invites children to take part rather than simply comply. The polished silence of the past has softened. Something has been gained: openness, reassurance, space for feeling. Yet something else has faded too, that shared stillness, that sense of occasion. Childhood hasn't just changed with the times, it carries a different emotional weight now, and perhaps that's why those old halls still echo so clearly in memory. For more of these unbelievable memories, tap the video on your screen. The 1970s stories are something else. Don't forget to subscribe.